Why was everyone ignoring her at the briefing table? The room buzzed with the low hum of voices, metal chairs scraping against the floor, papers rustling. Men and women in fatigues leaned over the long table, some pointing at the map projected on the wall. It showed a jagged valley, roads carved into the rock, red markers scattered like wounds across the terrain. A dangerous zone, a kill box waiting to close. She sat at the far end, spine straight, hands resting on the table, but no one looked her way. Not once. It was as if she wasn't there. They had already chosen her nickname without ever saying it aloud. The weakest link, the one who'd slow them down, the one who'd crack. And maybe that's why her heart raced harder than anyone else's in that room, because she knew what they didn't. There was something she hadn't told them, not yet. The colonel's voice cut through the tension. Alpha Squad will move in along the ridge. Bravo, you'll set overwatch positions here and here. Extraction window, 1900 sharp. No margin for error. A murmur of acknowledgement rippled through the squad. Boots tapped against the concrete floor. One soldier let out a sharp laugh, but it wasn't humor, it was nerves. Her eyes flicked to the map again, tracing the red marks. She knew what those meant: IEDs, traps, ambush points. She studied the intel longer than anyone else, long after the others left the room the night before, and she'd seen something, a pattern, a gap. But no one had asked her, not once. The colonel dismissed them. Chairs pushed back, bodies stood, conversations rose. They filed out, leaving her behind like a shadow no one noticed. She stayed seated, her gaze locked on the map still glowing faintly on the wall. And in that silence, she whispered to herself, "They don't trust me, fine, they don't have to, I'll be there when it matters." Her name was Claire Hensley, first deployment, first mission, and already carrying a weight heavier than her rucksack. Not because of the enemy, not because of the terrain, but because she had to prove not to them but to herself that she belonged. The air outside the operations tent was sharp, dry, almost metallic. The desert sun beat down, casting long shadows across the compound. Dust rose with each step of the soldiers heading to their gear. Laughter here, curses there, nervous energy humming like a live wire. Claire walked slower, each step measured. She carried her rifle across her chest, fingers brushing the smooth metal like it was the only friend she could rely on. Her thoughts drifted back, uninvited, to the night before deployment. Her mother standing at the doorway, wringing her hands. "Claire, you don't have to do this. No one will think less of you." But Claire had only shaken her head. "Someone has to hold the line, Mom. Why not me?" Her mother's eyes had glistened. "Because you've already lost too much." And Claire had turned away before the tears could fall. Now, surrounded by soldiers who didn't see her, she swallowed that memory down like a stone. They mounted up, the roar of the armored convoy drowning out any words. Engines coughed to life, the ground trembling beneath the weight. Dust swirled in choking clouds as doors slammed shut. Inside the vehicle, the air was thick with sweat, oil, and silence. One of the squad, Ramirez, broad shoulders, scar along his jaw, broke the quiet. "First real mission for some of you. Don't screw it up." His eyes lingered on Claire just long enough to sting. She said nothing, just nodded once, eyes forward. The convoy rolled, hours stretched. The desert blurred into endless waves of rock and sand, shimmering under the punishing sun. She closed her eyes for a moment, listening, to the hum of the engine, to the rattle of loose gear, to the pounding of her own heart. She thought of her brother then, Daniel, his laugh, his voice, the way he used to ruffle her hair when she followed him into the woods behind their house. He'd gone off to war first. He hadn't come back. And in that silence, Claire had made her vow. If she was called weak, if she was doubted, if she was ignored, she would still stand. Because Daniel couldn't. The convoy halted. The back doors slammed open, light searing inside. "Out, move." Boots hit the dirt, weapons up. The air tasted of dust and heat, stifling. They spread out, moving toward the jagged ridgeline that cut the horizon like a scar. Overwatch positions. Advance along the valley. That was the plan. But Claire's eyes narrowed as she scanned the terrain. Something wasn't right. Too quiet, too still. Not even a bird in the sky. She slowed her pace, letting her squad move ahead. Her boots crunched against gravel. The silence pressed harder. She felt it in her chest. A warning. Then a sound, barely there, a faint click beneath her foot. Her breath caught. Every nerve in her body froze. IED. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Slowly, carefully, she glanced down. A pressure plate. Buried, crude, but lethal. One wrong move and the blast would take her legs, maybe her life. She wanted to scream, to call out, but her throat locked. If she panicked, if she shouted now, the others would see. And the word would spread, weakest link. The one who couldn't even take a step without stumbling into a trap. Her hands trembled. Sweat stung her eyes. She thought of Daniel again, of her mother's trembling voice, of the vow she'd made in silence. Not here, not like this. Her breathing slowed. In, out. She studied the ground, the wires, the angle. She remembered the manuals, the hours of training, the demonstrations she'd watched 100 times. She crouched, steadying her rifle against the dirt, forcing her hands not to shake. Every movement deliberate. The squad ahead didn't notice she'd stopped. No one looked back. Carefully, she slid her knife free, easing the blade under the pressure plate. Her breath hitched. A bead of sweat slipped down her cheek. She lifted just enough to slide a rock underneath, locking it in place. Clicking. The weight shifted, the trigger held, the plate stayed down. She stepped back, chest heaving, alive, intact, silent. No one saw, no one knew. And she didn't tell them, not yet. Because this wasn't the moment. The time would come, and when it did, they'd understand. The squad moved deeper into the valley, red dust rising with each step. Claire followed, her rifle steady, her eyes sharper than before. Every rock, every shadow, every ripple in the ground, she saw it all. Her pulse was still racing, but her mind was clear now. She had crossed the line, faced the trap, and she hadn't broken. Ahead, Ramirez raised his hand, signaling a halt. He crouched, peering through his scope. His voice was low, urgent. Movement, 2 o'clock, ridge. The squad dropped to the dirt, rifles up, eyes scanning. Heat shimmered, rocks blurred, and then the glint of metal. Claire's chest tightened. This was it. The ambush she'd seen on the map, the one no one had asked her about. Her finger hovered near the trigger, breath held, the world narrowed. And in that razor's edge of silence, she knew something with absolute clarity. They could call her the weakest link, they could ignore her voice, but when the chain was tested, she would hold. Because she refused to break. What do you do when everyone else sees danger too late, yet you've seen it all along? Claire lay pressed against the dirt, cheek rough against gravel, breath shallow. The squad around her tensed, rifles aimed at the ridge where Ramirez had spotted the glint. The silence stretched, taut and dangerous. A faint wind carried dust across the valley floor, swirling in thin veils. Somewhere high above, a stone shifted. Then movement, a figure quick and low sliding between rocks, another. Shadows became shapes, rifles became real. Ramirez cursed under his breath. Contact, 2 o'clock, multiple. The crack of gunfire shattered the stillness. Bullets hissed through the air, chipping stone, snapping past ears. The squad returned fire, the thunder of rifles echoing against the walls of the valley. Dust burst into plumes where rounds struck dirt. Claire sighted down her scope, steadying her breath. She found one of them, lean figure, scarf wrapped over his face, weapon raised. She squeezed. The rifle kicked. The figure dropped. Her heart lurched, but she stayed locked in, searching for the next. Another shape darting behind cover. Another shot. Another body falling. And yet her chest tightened with every trigger pull, not out of fear, out of memory. Her brother's voice again, haunting. Daniel, sitting beside her on the porch years ago, cleaning his rifle before his last deployment. It doesn't get easier, Claire. Don't believe anyone who says it does. You just learn to carry it. The words hit her harder than the recoil. Ramirez barked orders, voice raw. Suppressing fire, keep them pinned. The squad obeyed, unleashing a storm of rounds. But Claire noticed something the others didn't. The angles, the rhythm, the way the attackers weren't trying to win the firefight. They were forcing them, pushing them, herding them deeper into the valley. A trap just like she'd seen on the map. Her pulse pounded in her ears. She wanted to shout to warn them, but her voice caught, not because she was afraid of speaking, because she remembered the last time she had tried. 3 nights ago, training simulation, she had spotted a flaw in Ramirez's maneuver, pointed it out. He had laughed. "Thanks, rookie, but we've got it covered." And when the simulation failed, no one remembered what she'd said. They just remembered that she doubted. And now here they were, walking into the real thing. Another volley of fire cracked across the ridge. Stone exploded inches from her head. She gritted her teeth, forced her lungs steady. This time she wouldn't stay silent. "Left flank," her voice cut through, sharp, clear. "They're circling us, driving us forward." Ramirez spun toward her, eyes flashing with irritation, about to shut her down. But then he saw it too. Shapes moving along the left ridge, closing in. His jaw tightened. He gave the order. "Shift fire, left ridge, move, move." The squad adjusted, redirecting their storm of bullets. The attackers faltered, caught mid-stride. One dropped, another fell back. The ambush began to fracture. Claire exhaled, a shuddering release she didn't realize she'd been holding. Ramirez didn't thank her, he didn't even look at her, but he didn't silence her again. That was enough. The firefight dragged on, minutes stretched thin and sharp. Heat pressed against her skin, sweat stung her eyes, her shoulder ached from recoil. But slowly, steadily, their fire pushed the enemy back. The ridge emptied. The valley fell quiet. Only the echo remained, and the smell of gunpowder. The squad stayed prone, rifles still aimed, breaths harsh. No one moved for long moments. Then Ramirez gave the call. "Cease fire, hold positions." The silence after was almost unbearable. Claire's ears rang. Her pulse still raced. Her finger trembled near the trigger. She forced herself to lower her weapon, to breathe. Ramirez scanned the squad, his expression hard. Then he looked at Claire, only for a second, but it was different this time. Less contempt, more calculation. She felt it, the smallest shift, not acceptance, but maybe possibility. The squad regrouped, checking ammo, murmuring low. One of the younger soldiers, Greene, pale and wide-eyed, fumbled with his magazine, hands shaking. Claire caught his gaze. He looked away fast, ashamed. She wanted to say something to ease him, but the words stuck. She wasn't sure if he'd listen. Instead, she just gave a quiet nod, small, barely there, but he saw. And for the first time since the briefing, she didn't feel invisible. They advanced again, slower now, eyes sharper, nerves tighter. The valley stretched ahead, walls closing like jaws. The sun dipped lower, shadows long and restless. As they moved, Claire's mind wandered, because silence always dragged memories out of hiding. She thought of Daniel again, his last letter, written in blocky, rushed handwriting, edges smudged. "Don't follow me into this life, Claire. It takes too much. Promise me you'll stay where it's safe." She hadn't kept that promise. She had stepped right where he'd fallen, and sometimes in the dark she wondered if she had done it out of honor or guilt. But there was no turning back now. The squad reached a narrow cut in the rock, barely wide enough for two to pass at once. Ramirez signaled the halt. He eyed the path, frowning. "Too quiet," he muttered. Claire's stomach sank. The map flashed in her memory. The red markers clustered near this choke point. She knew what it meant. Her throat tightened. She forced the words out. "It's rigged, the choke. They're waiting for us." Ramirez turned, eyes sharp. For a long moment he just stared. The others shifted, uncertain. Then he nodded once, reluctant. "All right, we check it first." He gestured to her. "You're up." The air thickened. The squad's eyes flicked to her, some curious, some doubtful, some almost relieved it wasn't them. Her boots felt like lead as she stepped forward. The choke loomed dark and narrow, shadows pooling like ink. She knelt, scanning the ground, every sense stretched thin. There, the faint outline of disturbed dirt, the glint of wire under a rock, the barely visible bulge of a buried device. Her pulse pounded, sweat rolled down her temple. She moved slow, knife in hand, easing dirt away, tracing the wires, disabling one then another. Her hands shook, but she controlled it. One mistake here and the chain snapped. Minutes passed like hours. Finally she leaned back. "Clear, this one's safe." The squad exhaled in unison, tension breaking. Ramirez gave the order to move. As they filed through, one of the older soldiers, Harris, murmured just loud enough for her to hear, "Good eye, kid." She didn't reply, just pressed on, but inside something loosened. The doubt didn't vanish. The weight didn't lift. But for the first time since the briefing table, she felt necessary. The valley stretched on, each step heavier, the sun sinking lower. The mission wasn't over, not even close. But already the chain had been tested, and she hadn't broken. Not yet. How do you tell who you really are, when the dark hides everything? The sun dropped low, bleeding red across the valley walls, then sank behind jagged ridges. Shadows lengthened, deepened, swallowed the path ahead until the light was gone. Night came fast in the desert. One moment heat, the next a chill that seeped into bones. The air grew sharp, dry, each breath like sandpaper. The squad slowed, their shapes little more than shifting silhouettes against the dark. Boots crunched softer now, rifles tighter in hand. The silence thickened. Only the whisper of wind moved through the canyon. Claire's eyes adjusted, pupils wide, every detail sharper, edges of rock, the faint gleam of metal. The training had drilled it in. Night was both cover and curse. You saw less, heard more, doubted everything. Ramirez raised a fist. The squad froze. He turned, voice low. "We hold here, set perimeter, no noise." They moved with practiced rhythm, dropping packs, crouching behind rocks, setting weapons steady. Small, controlled movements, breaths held. Claire took her spot near the edge, her rifle resting on stone, scope cutting into the dark. She scanned. Left, right, nothing but black ridges, nothing but silence. And yet the silence pressed too heavy. It wasn't empty, it was waiting. Her heartbeat drummed in her ears. She forced it slow. In, out, in, out. Greene shifted near her, fumbling with his gear, hands clumsy in the dark. He cursed under his breath. The sound was too loud. Claire touched his arm, firm but quiet. He froze. She shook her head once, mouthed, "Breathe." His shoulders dropped, his hands steadied. He gave her a small nod. She turned back to her scope. The ridge lines loomed like teeth, sharp and merciless. For a moment she imagined Daniel there, standing tall in his gear, his familiar grin flashing. She blinked hard. He wasn't there. He never would be again. Her chest ached, but she pushed it down. Focus, the mission. The hours dragged. The desert grew colder, breath turning to mist in the dark. Someone coughed, muffled it. Someone else whispered a prayer under their breath. Human sounds in inhuman silence. Then footsteps, faint, wrong, not from their perimeter. Her scope snapped left. Shadows moved against the darker rock, shapes, low, careful, hunting. Her breath caught. Her finger slid to the trigger. She hesitated. Could be animals, could be ghosts of nerves. Then a glint, metal again, rifles raised. She didn't wait. One shot cracked the silence, cutting clean. A figure dropped. The squad jolted, weapons snapping to life. The ridge lit up with fire, muzzle flashes strobing the night. Bullets whined, ricocheted, dust exploded. Claire kept firing, controlled bursts, every shot deliberate. She counted each round, felt each recoil. She wasn't fast. She was precise. Ramirez barked orders, but the noise drowned him out. Harris shouted something, voice ragged. Greene's rifle jammed, panic flickering in his eyes. Claire dropped a hand on his barrel, shoved it down, yanked the bolt back hard. A casing popped free. She slapped his shoulder. Go. He nodded, shaky, and fired again. The firefight stretched, sharp and merciless. Then abrupt silence. The ridge emptied. The night closed back in. Smoke hung in the cold air. The squad panted, chests heaving, eyes wide in the dark. No one spoke for long moments. The silence was worse now, heavy with the aftertaste of gunpowder and fear. Ramirez broke it. Status. One by one, voices answered. Up, up, up. Claire's voice was the last. Up. The word trembled in her chest, but came out steady. Ramirez's gaze lingered on her in the dark. Again, no words, but less doubt. They regrouped, shifting deeper into cover, nerves raw. Harris lowered himself against a rock, pulled something from his vest. Not ammo, not gear, a photograph. He stared at it in the dim glow of a chem light. Claire glanced without meaning to. 2 kids, smiling. His hand shook slightly as he tucked it back. He caught her eyes. For once his voice wasn't hard, just tired. Don't ever get used to this, kid. You do, you're done. She nodded, throat tight. The night pressed on. The squad rotated watch. Claire stayed alert, eyes never leaving her scope, but her mind drifted anyway, pulled backward. She remembered Daniel's funeral. The flag folded neat, crisp lines heavy in her hands, the silence of her mother's sobs, the way people whispered, "Brave boy, such a loss." The family gave enough. Enough. But she hadn't believed that. Not then, not now. That was why she'd signed her name. Why she'd trained harder than her body thought it could. Why she'd endured the looks, the whispers, the dismissal. Not to be a hero, not even to be seen. To carry the weight Daniel couldn't anymore. Her chest tightened. She blinked hard, forced the memory away. The present was sharper, harsher. She gripped her rifle tighter, grounding herself. Hours bled into hours. The desert stayed cruel, every sound sharper, every silence deeper. And then the sound again, not footsteps this time. Engines, distant, low rumble rolling through the rocks. The squad snapped awake, every head turning. Lights flickered faint in the distance. Vehicles, more than one. Ramirez's face hardened. We move now. They packed fast, quiet, tension ripping through them. Claire slung her rifle, tightened her straps, heart pounding. The squad slipped through shadows, leaving their temporary cover, moving toward the extraction point miles away. Boots silent, breaths shallow. The engines grew louder behind them. The chase had begun. Claire stayed near the rear, eyes cutting back often. Headlights swept across the valley, bouncing off rocks, growing brighter. The rumble deepened, closer. Sweat chilled her skin despite the cold night. Her lungs burned with every step. A voice inside whispered doubt. They'll catch us, they'll overrun us, you'll slow them down. But another voice, Daniel's, rose stronger. You don't stop, you don't break. Her stride lengthened, her grip tightened. The squad pushed harder, the night endless around them. Every step a battle, every breath a vow. And though fear gnawed at her, though doubt clawed her chest, she kept moving. Because the chain was only as strong as its weakest link. And she refused to be it. Not tonight. Not ever. What keeps you running when every part of you begs to stop? The desert stretched endless, black and merciless under a starless sky. Claire's boots struck the dirt in rhythm with the squad, lungs dragging sharp, burning air. Her gear weighed heavy, straps biting into shoulders, rifle slamming against her chest with each stride. Behind them, the low growl of engines grew louder. Lights swept like knives across the valley floor. The enemy was closing. Ramirez's voice hissed through the dark. Keep moving, no noise, don't stop. But every step was pain, every breath a battle. The ground sloped upward, jagged rocks tearing at boots, shadows twisting into obstacles. Greene stumbled, nearly fell, but Harris grabbed his arm, yanked him forward. Claire stayed near the rear, eyes snapping back often. The lights grew brighter, bouncing with the terrain. Trucks, maybe more. Mounted guns, too. She could almost feel the vibration of engines through the ground. Her mind screamed one truth: they wouldn't outrun vehicles on foot. Ramirez knew it too. His jaw clenched, his pace relentless. The squad didn't question him, not out loud, but the fear pressed against them, heavy as the packs on their backs. Claire's lungs burned, her thighs screamed, her shoulders ached raw. She wanted to collapse, to let the dirt swallow her. But another voice pushed harder. "Daniel, you don't stop, you don't break." She clenched her jaw, forced her stride steady. Minutes dragged like hours. The engines drew closer. A gun fired short bursts into the night. Dirt spat near their feet. They scattered, diving for cover behind rocks, hearts pounding. The trucks roared closer, headlights slicing the dark. Muzzle flashes strobed from the beds of the vehicles. Bullets hissed, ricocheting off stone. Ramirez shouted over the chaos, "Set, return fire." The squad dropped into firing positions, rifles spitting back. The night lit with thunder, flashes, sparks. Claire's scope found shapes in the headlights, silhouettes raising rifles. She fired. One fell. Another. Her shots were steady, cold. But there were too many. Trucks skidded to a halt, doors flying open. Shadows poured out, weapons raised. The valley exploded with chaos. Bullets shredded stone. Dust filled the air, choking. The squad fought hard, teeth clenched, bursts precise. Greene panicked, nearly emptying his mag too fast until Harris barked him down. Claire shifted fire, covered angles others missed. Still the tide pressed closer. They couldn't hold. Claire's heart slammed against her ribs. The trucks loomed larger, shapes fanning out. The squad was being encircled. Her mind raced. Options, angles, the map. She remembered the choke point earlier, the cluster of red markers she had warned about. Traps, mines. Her pulse spiked. If the enemy pushed straight through that path. "Ramirez," she shouted, voice cutting raw through gunfire. "The choke ahead, it's rigged, we can draw them in." He whipped toward her, eyes wild. Hesitation flickered, then resolve. "Fall back," he barked, "through the cut now." The squad moved, firing in bursts, covering each other as they retreated. Claire stayed near the back, laying fire to slow the enemy, chest heaving, adrenaline burning. They reached the choke. Claire dropped to her knees, scanning the ground with frantic precision. Yes, wires, plates, charges buried shallow. Her hands shook, but she steadied them, adjusted one, shifted a rock. The enemy poured closer, shouts echoing, boots pounding. "Now," Ramirez barked. Claire yanked the wire she'd freed, sparks snapping. A deafening blast ripped the night. Fire tore upward, rocks raining down, screams shattering the dark. Dust swallowed the choke point in chaos. Silence after, heavy, unnatural. The squad crouched, breaths ragged, ears ringing. The path was gone, collapsed in fire and stone. The enemy's advance stalled. Ramirez's chest heaved. He looked at her, eyes sharp, fierce. This time he nodded. Not reluctant, not dismissive, a soldier's nod, respect. Claire's lungs ached, her hands trembled, her body screamed, but inside something shifted, a weight lifted. For the first time she wasn't just there, she mattered. The squad pressed on, slipping deeper into the valley, moving fast before the enemy regrouped. The night grew colder. Breath steamed in the air. Muscles burned raw. They found a small hollow in the rock, enough to collapse for a moment. No fire, no lights, just silence and darkness. The squad dropped heavy, some pulling at canteens, others staring blank. Harris leaned back, his breath ragged. Greene sat shaking, head in his hands. Claire lowered herself slowly, every muscle screaming. She unslung her rifle, rested it across her lap. Her hands still shook, faint but uncontrollable. No one spoke for a long time. Only the sound of breathing, shifting gear, quiet curses under breath. Then Harris broke it, voice low. "Hell of a move, kid." Ramirez said nothing, but his glance toward her was enough. Claire didn't answer. Her throat was too tight. She stared into the dark, mind replaying the explosion, the screams, her chest clenched. They weren't just shadows. They were people, men who had voices, families, maybe photographs tucked into vests. And she had been the one who lit the fuse. Her hands curled tighter around the rifle, her stomach twisted. She wanted to believe it was necessary, that it had saved lives, her squad's lives, but the echo of those screams gnawed. She looked down at her hands, trembling, stained. She wondered if Daniel had felt this too, if he'd wrestled the same hollow weight after every fight. She remembered his last words before he shipped out. "You're stronger than you think, Claire, but strength isn't what people say. It's what you live with after." Her throat ached. She shut her eyes, pressing them tight. Sleep didn't come, not really, just fragments. Memories tangled with shadows, Daniel's grin, her mother's tears, the blast, the screams. When she opened her eyes again, the faintest light touched the sky. Dawn. The squad stirred, weary but alive. Ramirez rose, adjusted his gear, voice rough but steady. "We move." They packed in silence. Every step forward would hurt. Every choice would weigh more. But as Claire slung her rifle, as she stood with trembling legs, one truth cut sharper than the pain. They could call her the weakest link. They could doubt, dismiss, forget her. But when the chain strained, when it screamed, she held. Because she refused to break. What is heavier, your pack, your wounds, or the memories you carry? The desert was different at dawn. No longer the pitch-black void of night, it came alive in muted colors, stone and sand painted in gray-blue, the horizon blushing faint orange where the sun threatened to rise. The air, still chilled from night's grip, clung damp to skin and gear. Boots crunched softly in the dust as the squad pushed forward, weary, slower than before, but unwilling to stop. Claire's body ached in ways she hadn't thought possible. Her calves felt carved from stone, her shoulders torn raw beneath the straps of her pack. Every inhale scraped her throat dry, and every exhale clouded faint in the morning cold. Still she moved, step after step, legs shaking but carrying her forward. She couldn't let herself be the one who broke. They walked in silence. There was no chatter, no wasted words. Every man and woman in the squad was lost in their own thoughts, in their own rhythm of survival, one boot forward, then the other. The only sound was the desert itself, wind whispering across stone, the faint clatter of loose gear, the steady crunch of 8 pairs of boots. Behind them the valley was scarred black. Smoke curled from the collapsed choke point where Claire had triggered the blast. No trucks followed now. No headlights cut through the dim horizon. But the reprieve was temporary. The enemy was regrouping. Claire knew it. They all did. Ramirez finally raised a fist, halting them near a jagged ridge. He crouched low, scanning the terrain, then gestured them into a huddle behind the rocks. "Check your water," he ordered, voice gravel rough. "We'll ration 2 sips for now, no more." Canteens shifted quietly. Claire unscrewed hers, the metal cool in her trembling hands. She tilted it just enough for a swallow, small, sharp, almost cruel in its brevity, then screwed it shut, fingers lingering. The thirst in her throat begged for more, but she clenched her jaw and ignored it. "Food?" Harris asked. Ramirez shook his head. "Later, keep your stomachs light. We move hard until mid-sun, then rest in cover." The squad nodded. No complaints, they knew the rules. But Greene broke the silence anyway, voice cracking. "Sarge, how far do we have to go?" Ramirez's gaze cut to him, steady, hard. "Far enough. That's all you need to know." Greene looked down, ashamed. Harris clapped him once on the shoulder, silent but grounding. Claire said nothing. Her eyes traced the horizon, searching. Her hands still trembled faintly, though less than last night. The echoes of the blast, of the screams, still lingered, but something in her chest had hardened. She couldn't turn it off, couldn't forget, but she could use it. Ramirez gave the signal. They rose, adjusted their gear, and pressed on. By mid-morning, the desert was no longer cold. The sun burned high, unrelenting, its heat radiating off stone until the ground itself seemed to breathe fire. Shadows vanished. Every step became punishment, boots sinking deeper into sand, sweat stinging eyes. Their pace slowed, backs bent under weight. Claire's lips cracked, salt stinging. Her tongue felt like paper. The straps of her pack carved trenches into her shoulders. Ramirez drove them forward with silent determination, his eyes sharp, jaw clenched. No weakness showed, though even his steps dragged heavier. Harris muttered under breath, "Feels like marching inside an oven." "Shut it," Ramirez growled, but his voice carried no real bite. They passed a ridge, the ground sloping down into a shallow basin dotted with broken stone. Ramirez gestured them to halt, then dropped to one knee, scanning with his scope. Claire crouched beside a boulder, catching her breath, the sweat running hot down her spine. Something flickered at the edge of the basin, movement, shadows shifting. Her eyes narrowed. She raised her rifle, peered through the scope. For a heartbeat she saw nothing, just rock and heat shimmer. Then figures, low, moving with intent. Her pulse spiked, contact 10 o'clock, moving low. Ramirez snapped his rifle up, glassing the basin. His jaw tightened. Ambush. The squad dropped fast, rifles braced, eyes cutting across the basin. Figures rose from behind rocks, enemy scouts, at least a dozen, rifles raised. The air snapped alive with gunfire. Bullets cracked off stone, sparks spat. The squad fired back, controlled bursts. Greene flinched low behind cover, hands shaking. Harris barked at him to fire. Claire's scope caught a shadow moving fast along the ridgeline, angling around them. She pivoted, fired, watched the figure drop. Another moved behind it. She didn't hesitate. Crack. Down. Her chest burned, but her hands were steady now, her mind sharp. The basin became chaos, dust, thunder, flashes of light. Enemy fire pinned them low. Ramirez shouted orders, shifting positions. Harris returned fire with precision, each shot purposeful. Then Claire saw it, one of the enemies pulling something from his pack. Not a rifle, not a knife, a radio. He ducked behind stone, speaking fast into the mouthpiece. Her stomach twisted cold. Reinforcements. "Ramirez," she shouted, "they're calling backup." His curse ripped raw. "We move now." The squad laid suppressing fire, then broke hard up the ridge. Bullets chased them, snapping the dirt near their boots. Greene stumbled, nearly fell, but Claire grabbed his pack, yanked him upright, forcing him forward. The ridge burned their legs, muscles screaming, lungs shredding, but they climbed. At the top, they scrambled into jagged stone, collapsed breathless behind cover. Ramirez's face was pale, jaw clenched. "They'll bring more. We can't stay." "Where?" Harris demanded, panting. Ramirez scanned the horizon, eyes sharp. "East, the canyon. If we reach it, they can't bring vehicles. Too narrow, we hold there." No argument, no other option. They moved again, urgency burning through exhaustion. The desert stretched endless, each ridge revealing only more stone, more sand. The sun scorched overhead, merciless. Greene's face was beet red, sweat pouring. Harris's jaw worked tight, muttering curses under his breath. Even Ramirez's steps faltered faintly. Claire's vision blurred at the edges, but she forced her legs to keep moving, her hands to keep steady. Then Greene stumbled again, this time hard. He collapsed to one knee, gasping, I can't." Ramirez spun, grabbed him by the vest, yanked him up. "On your feet, soldier. You stop, you die." "I can't," Greene's voice cracked, eyes wide, terrified. "I'm done, I'm—" A gunshot cracked. Stone shattered inches from Greene's face. Enemy fire. Ramirez cursed, dragging Greene into cover. Shadows appeared on the ridge behind them, scouts, firing as they advanced. They were being hunted. Claire dropped behind a rock, rifle snapping up. Her pulse thundered. She fired, dropping one, then another. Harris and Ramirez returned fire, suppressing. But Greene sat frozen, hands over his head, shaking. Bullets screamed past. Harris shouted at him, fury in his voice. "Get your damn rifle up." "Nothing." Claire's stomach knotted. They couldn't carry him and fight, and if he froze now, they'd all die. Her voice ripped raw from her throat. "Greene, look at me." He didn't move. She slammed a hand against his shoulder, shaking him hard. His wide, tear-filled eyes finally met hers. "You think you're weak," she snapped, her voice sharp, cutting. "So did I, but weak people don't keep moving when everything says stop. Weak people don't pull the trigger when it matters. Weak people don't survive." Bullets hissed overhead, dust rained down. She shoved her rifle into his hands. "You want to live, then fight, right now fight." Greene's chest heaved. His hands trembled around the rifle. For a heartbeat he froze again. Then his jaw clenched, his eyes sharpened. He raised the rifle, braced it on the rock, and fired. One shot, then another. A shadow fell, then another. Something cracked inside him. Not fear breaking him down, but resolve breaking free. The squad rallied, their fire cutting sharper, forcing the enemy back. Ramirez barked commands, shifting angles. Harris laughed through clenched teeth, pride in his voice. "That's it, Greene, now you're alive." Claire's chest burned, her hands shook harder, but inside something surged, fierce, unstoppable. They were still standing. And the enemy was not. The ridge grew silent again. Smoke drifted in faint trails from scorched stone. Bodies lay scattered. The squad crouched low, chests heaving, eyes scanning the horizon for more. Ramirez finally exhaled, slow, controlled. He looked at Greene, then at Claire. His gaze lingered on her, steady, heavy. "Good work," he said simply. 2 words, but from him, they weighed more than metals. Claire lowered herself slowly, trembling. The rifle felt heavier than before. Her throat ached dry, her chest heaved. But in her heart the voice was louder than exhaustion, louder than doubt. "You are not the weakest link. Not anymore." Why does safety always feel like a trap? The canyon rose before them like a scar in the desert, narrow, jagged, its stone walls split open as if the earth itself had been torn apart by a blade. From the ridge line it looked like salvation. Shade, cover, a place where no truck or armored convoy could follow. But as they staggered closer, every instinct inside Claire whispered something darker. The walls were too high, the shadows too deep. If you stepped inside, you weren't just protected, you were contained. Ramirez crouched at the mouth of the canyon, scanning with his scope. The squad dropped low behind him, chests heaving, boots dragging in the sand. The morning sun blazed at their backs, casting long shadows into the rift. "Options?" Harris rasped, voice hoarse. Ramirez kept scanning, his jaw clenched. "We enter fast, quiet, no skylining. The walls will shield us. They'll slow pursuit." Greene swallowed hard, eyes darting into the dark slit ahead. "Or box us in." No one answered. The silence was answer enough. Ramirez finally lowered the scope. "It's a risk, but it's our only one. Move." No hesitation, no debate, orders were orders. They rose, packs groaning against their backs, and slipped into the canyon one by one. The air changed instantly. Cooler, damp. Every sound echoed, their boots crunching louder than before, each breath bouncing off stone. The canyon walls rose steep, jagged, streaked with centuries of erosion, like broken cathedral pillars climbing to the sky. Claire's skin prickled. Her rifle felt heavier, her eyes sharper. She scanned every ridge, every crevice above them. The silence wasn't silence, it was waiting. The squad moved in a staggered file, Ramirez leading, Harris covering rear. Claire kept near the middle, her rifle raised, her ears straining for sounds that weren't their own. Her throat burned dry, her tongue sticking. She wanted water, she wanted rest, but more than that she wanted certainty, something she could hold, something that didn't feel like walking into a grave. They pressed deeper. Sunlight narrowed to a thin strip above, shadows swallowing them whole. The air grew cooler, almost chilling despite the desert heat outside. And then a sound. A pebble skittering down stone. The squad froze, rifles snapping upward. Claire's pulse hammered. Her eyes traced the ridgeline, searching. For a heartbeat, nothing, just still stone. Then movement, shadows shifting at the top of the canyon, figures faint but there, watching. Up high, Claire hissed, rifle steady. Ramirez cursed low, keep moving, double time. The squad broke into a jog, packs bouncing, rifles angled upward. Boots slammed stone. The canyon echoed with their breath, their steps, their hearts. Shouts carried faint from above. Foreign words, orders, then gunfire. Bullets cracked off rock, sparking stone chips down on them. The canyon became a shooting gallery. Run, Ramirez barked. Find cover. The squad sprinted, weaving, hugging walls. The canyon bent left, then right, offering jagged corners, broken slabs of fallen rock. They dove behind them, rifles snapping up. Claire's scope caught a figure silhouetted against the strip of sky above, rifle braced. She exhaled, squeezed, dropped him. Another rose, crack, down. Dust rained from impacts. Greene cursed, hugging cover. Harris fired upward, his shots sparking against stone, suppressing. Ramirez leaned out, firing sharp bursts, voice cutting. We can't stay pinned, move deeper. They sprinted again, zigzagging, the canyon twisting narrower. Claire's legs burned, lungs tearing raw. Bullets whined past, stone spitting sparks. Then they reached it. A break in the canyon wall, a collapsed section that had formed a natural overhang. Shade, deep, thick enough to shield them. Ramirez shoved them inside. Hold here, reload. They collapsed into the shadow, gasping, rifles clutched. Sweat poured down faces, streaking dust. The gunfire above slowed, then faded. Silence. Only their breath, ragged and heavy, remained. Minutes passed, maybe more. Time bent strange in the dark. Greene leaned against stone, eyes wide, chest heaving. His voice cracked. We can't outrun them, they'll keep tracking us, keep pushing us deeper. Ramirez didn't look at him. He checked his map, though Claire knew it was useless. The canyon wasn't on any detailed chart. Harris spat into the dust. He's not wrong. They've got the high ground. If they shadow us long enough, they'll bleed us dry. The words hung heavy. Claire swallowed hard, throat raw. Her voice came quieter. So what do we do? Ramirez finally lifted his gaze. His eyes were sharp, steady, unreadable. We move at night. Use the dark, keep low, stay silent. Until then we rest. Rotate, watch. The squad nodded, though no one looked reassured. Hours dragged. The canyon stayed cool, shadows stretching. They took turns on watch, eyes never leaving the ridges above. Claire sat against the stone, rifle across her lap, exhaustion dragging at her bones. But her mind wouldn't quiet. She thought of last night, the explosion, the convoy swallowed in fire, the faces she couldn't forget. She thought of Greene's breakdown, his wide, terrified eyes, and the way she'd seen herself in them. Weakness, fear, that was supposed to define her, and yet here she was, still breathing, still holding the chain. Her hand traced the rifle's grip, fingertips raw. A whisper slipped out, softer than breath, "Don't break." Her father's voice echoed, faint from memory, rough, tired, always steady. A chain, only as strong as its weakest link, Claire. But sometimes the link that everyone doubts is the one that saves the whole. Her chest ached. She blinked hard, fighting it down. She wasn't that link. She couldn't be. But if she stopped now, if she gave in, then she truly would be the weakest. Night finally came. The canyon fell black, the strip of sky above pricked with faint stars. The squad moved again, slow, cautious, rifles steady. Their boots whispered soft on stone, every step deliberate. Shadows cloaked them, but the risk was constant. One sound too loud, one flash too careless, and the enemy above would strike. Claire's senses burned sharp. Every creak of gear, every breath too fast made her tense. They moved for hours, deeper into the canyon's gut. The walls grew closer, jagged, the air colder. Silence pressed heavier. Then another sound, faint, echoing. Not stone, not wind. Voices. Ramirez raised a fist, halting them. They froze, crouched low. The voices grew clearer, foreign, sharp. Flashlights flicked faint against stone ahead. Claire's chest clenched, not just above. The enemy was inside the canyon now, blocking the path. Ramirez's jaw tightened. Ambush ahead, scouts must have cut in. Options. Harris cursed low. We can't fight both above and ahead. Greene's voice cracked, whisper trembling. Then we're trapped. Silence heavy, crushing. Ramirez's eyes flicked to Claire. Not long, just a second, but enough. And she knew. There was no way forward unless someone made one. Her heart pounded, her mouth went dry, but the thought was clear, sharp. If she broke away, if she drew them off, created space, maybe the squad could slip through. But it meant stepping into fire, alone. Her pulse hammered. Fear surged, screaming at her to stay hidden, to survive. But deeper than fear was something else, something heavier. A memory, her father again, weary but certain. Dignity doesn't always speak, Claire. Sometimes it just acts. Her breath shook. Ramirez whispered, almost too quiet to hear, "We need a distraction." No one moved, no one volunteered. Until Claire's voice cut the dark, steady, soft. "I'll do it." The squad turned, stunned. Greene's eyes went wide. Harris shook his head sharply. No, out of the question. But Ramirez held her gaze, long, heavy. He saw it, the resolve, the refusal to break. And for the first time, he didn't doubt her. What drives someone to walk straight into danger? Fear, duty, or something deeper, something no bullet can touch? The canyon breathed silence. The squad crouched low against stone, the night air damp against their faces. Ahead, enemy voices murmured, sharp and guttural, bouncing off the walls. Flashlights flickered faint across the rock, searching, waiting. Above, the shadows of pursuers still lingered, silent but there. Trapped. Ramirez's whisper had barely left his mouth when Claire answered it with two words. "I'll do it." The squad turned to her, disbelief in their eyes. Greene's mouth opened soundless, Harris's jaw set hard in refusal. But Ramirez didn't move, didn't blink. He just watched her, long, quiet, his face unreadable in the dark. Claire's heart thundered, not with panic now, but with something heavier. "I can draw them out," she whispered. "Buy you space. You slip through, flank them, take the canyon." Harris shook his head, fierce. "You'll get cut down before you take 2 steps." "Not if I make them look the wrong way," she said, voice steady though her hands trembled faint on her rifle. Greene's whisper cracked. "Why you, why not me? Because I've already made peace with it," Claire cut him off. Her eyes didn't leave Ramirez. The sergeant's gaze was heavy, searching, for weakness, for hesitation, for anything that would make him shut her down. But all he found was resolve. Finally, Ramirez exhaled slow. His voice came low, rough. "You get 30 seconds, no more, then we move." Silence fell, agreement unspoken. Claire nodded once, her throat ached. She rose. The world changed the second she stepped from the cover of stone. The canyon air felt colder, sharper, cutting her skin like glass. Every step echoed too loud, bouncing along the rock like a drumbeat announcing her death. She moved low, rifle tight, breath steady but shallow. The flashlights ahead flicked again, sweeping the narrow corridor of stone. She pressed against the wall, her shadow melting into its jagged scars. Her mind screamed. Every instinct told her to crawl back, to hide, to survive. But another voice rose louder, the one that had carried her this far. "Don't break." Her boots whispered against stone. Her heart pounded louder than her steps. She was close now, too close. The voices ahead grew sharper, clearer. One laughed low, another answered. A flashlight beam swept near, licking the wall just feet from her. Her throat tightened. Her hand brushed the small charge clipped to her belt, one of the last they had, enough for distraction, not enough for escape. She glanced back once. Shadows crouched behind cover, Harris tense, Greene pale, Ramirez still as stone, watching, waiting. Her chest burned, she turned back. Then she ran. The canyon exploded with sound. Her boots hammered the stone, her rifle firing sharp bursts into the dark. The enemy shouted, startled, flashlights snapping toward her. Bullets cracked, ricocheting off walls, sparking shards into the air. She dove behind a boulder, yanked the charge free, thumbed it live. Beep, beep, beep. She hurled it deep into the shadows ahead. The blast tore the canyon apart, stone shattering, dust flooding, echoes booming like thunder trapped in a cage. Flashlights whipped wildly, enemy voices screaming confusion. Claire rose, firing, forcing their eyes on her, their barrels toward her. She felt every bullet whistle past, sparks biting her skin, stone splinters cutting her cheek. Her pulse roared in her ears. "Now," she screamed, her voice breaking raw. Behind, the squad burst from cover. Ramirez leading, Harris on his flank, Greene stumbling but firing. They slipped left into the dust cloud, ghosts moving through chaos. The enemy shouted louder, rifles cracking. But their eyes, their fury, their fire, stayed locked on Claire. She drew them, held them, carried them. The chain held. Time blurred, seconds stretched into forever. Claire fired until her rifle clicked empty, the bolt slamming hollow. Her hands moved on instinct, slamming another mag, pulling the bolt back. Her breath came sharp, ragged, but steady. She shifted, dove to another rock, firing again. Every muzzle flash lit the canyon in violent strobe. Dust choked her lungs, tears blurred her eyes, but she didn't stop. Not while the squad was moving, not while they needed her. Her pack felt lighter now, like she'd shed the weight of doubt itself. The stone that had dug into her shoulders, the whispers of weakness, the fear of breaking, it had all fallen away. All that remained was this moment. And then pain. A crack sharper than the rest. Her shoulder jerked back, heat exploding across her skin. She stumbled, slammed into the canyon wall, breath torn from her chest. The rifle nearly slipped, nearly. She clenched it tighter, teeth grinding, blood soaking her sleeve. Not yet. She rose again, pressed against stone, firing through the pain. Her voice ripped raw, echoing through the canyon. "Come on." The enemy roared, firing harder, angrier. And still she stood. Farther down the canyon, Ramirez and the squad burst from the dust cloud, flanking wide. They dropped two enemies fast, Harris's shots sharp, precise. Greene fired wild but hit, his shout of shock almost lost in the chaos. They moved like shadows, swift and brutal. The canyon turned against their hunters, cover breaking lines of fire, the ambush unraveling. But Ramirez glanced back once, just once, and his jaw locked hard. Claire was still there, alone, holding them. His chest tightened, but he turned back. They couldn't stop now, couldn't waste the opening she had torn open with blood and fire. The chain held because she refused to break. Claire's rifle clattered empty again. No time, no breath. She ripped a pistol from her holster, firing sharp, desperate shots. Her shoulder burned, her arms heavy. The dust thinned, shadows closed in. One raised a rifle, another followed. Her hand fumbled for her last grenade, small, heavy. The pin scraped cold against her fingers. Her breath shuddered. She pulled. The explosion tore the canyon again, heat flashing, stone raining. Figures screamed, thrown back. Claire's body slammed into the wall, ears ringing, chest heaving. Her vision blurred white, then black. But she heard it. Boots, her squad's boots, moving fast, alive. And then silence. The canyon was quiet again. Smoke drifted faint, curling along stone. Shadows lay still where enemies had fallen. Claire slumped against the wall, blood soaking her sleeve, breath shallow. Her head lolled, eyes heavy. And then Ramirez's hand gripped her vest, hauling her up. His face was hard, but his eyes burned with something else, something rare. Pride. You held, soldier, he growled low. You damn well held. Her chest ached heavy. Her lips cracked a faint, broken smile. I told you, she whispered, voice barely sound. I don't break. Ramirez's grip tightened, steadying her as Harris and Greene closed in, covering the shadows. The squad moved again, dragging her with them, deeper into the canyon. Alive. Because she refused to fall. Because the weakest link had carried the chain. What happens when the weakest soldier becomes the one everyone else leans on? The canyon was smoke and stone. The echoes of gunfire had died, leaving only the hiss of settling dust and the faint drip of water seeping through cracks. The squad moved in shadows, limping, bleeding, alive. Claire leaned hard against Ramirez, her breath shallow, each step a razor drawn across her shoulder wound. The pistol dangled from her hand, spent, but she refused to let it drop. Every step was a battle, every breath burned, but she would not close her eyes, not yet. Not until they were clear. They reached a ridge, jagged rock climbing steep above them. The path narrowed, the stones slick under their boots. Beyond it, the canyon mouth opened to the wide plateau, open air, open sky, and maybe, just maybe, a path to survival. But the ridge was high, steep, and their bodies were breaking. Harris glanced up, face pale under soot. We won't all make it, he muttered. His rifle shook faint in his grip. Greene collapsed against the stone, gasping, his hands bloodied. I can't climb that. Shut it, Ramirez snapped, his voice sharp but low. His arm still braced Claire's weight, his eyes scanning the shadows below. We don't stop, we move. But his jaw was tight, he knew, they all knew. The ridge was no ordinary climb. With blood slicking their hands and strength bleeding into stone, it was a wall built to finish what the canyon had started. Claire's breath rattled in her chest. She lifted her head, eyes tracing the jagged path upward. The plateau shimmered faint in the moonlight above, close and yet impossibly far. She swallowed hard, her lips dry. We're getting out, she whispered. Ramirez looked down at her. You're barely standing. She met his stare, steady despite the blood soaking her sleeve. So lean harder. For a moment his expression cracked, the faintest shadow of respect or maybe sorrow. Then he nodded once. The climb began. Greene first, pulled by Harris's grip. His boots slipped, scraped, kicked loose stone, but he clung on, teeth bared, dragging himself inch by inch. His gasps were loud, ragged, but his hands refused to let go. Harris climbed behind him, his arm trembling with strain, but his body shielded Greene's when stone broke loose, his back taking the scrape of jagged rock. His jaw clenched, but he made no sound. Above them, Ramirez pushed Claire ahead, his shoulder under hers, his hand bracing her boot when she faltered. Her fingers bled against the stone, nails tearing, but she kept climbing. One hand, one step, one breath at a time. Every inch was agony. Every slip threatened to pull them back into the dark. But still they climbed. Halfway up, a voice cut the night. Harsh foreign enemy. The canyon below lit with beams, flashlights sweeping, rifles snapping into position. The ambush survivors, hunting. Bullets cracked, sparking against the ridge. Stone exploded inches from Claire's hand, cutting her palm raw. She bit back a scream, her grip slick with blood. Ramirez's rifle barked sharp in answer, his body braced against the stone as he fired downward. Harris added his own bursts, covering Greene's frantic scramble higher. Claire pressed flat against the rock, chest heaving. The sky above blurred with smoke. Her vision spun. She couldn't let go, not here, not now. She forced her hand higher, forced her boot into the crack above. Her body screamed, but she climbed. And with her the squad climbed. The firefight burned itself out. The squad's rifles clicked empty. Silence crashed again, broken only by the shouts below. The enemy was climbing now, slow, patient, certain. Ramirez's jaw was iron. He shoved Claire higher. Go, don't stop. Whatever happens, you go. Her throat caught. I'm not leaving you. Not your choice, soldier, he growled, I's never leaving hers. You don't break, remember, then prove it, move. His words cut harder than the wound in her shoulder. She wanted to argue, to fight him, to drag him up with her, but the look in his eyes stopped her. It wasn't command, it was trust. Her breath shook, then she climbed. Minutes stretched into eternity. Stone tore skin from flesh. Blood smeared handholds. The squad clawed their way higher, teeth clenched, bodies failing. At last, the plateau edge. Greene scrambled over first, collapsing flat, sobbing with relief. Harris dragged himself next, pulling Greene farther from the ridge. Claire reached last, her fingers barely catching the edge. Her strength gave, her body slipping back, until Ramirez's hand clamped her wrist, hauling her over with a guttural growl. She hit the plateau hard, gasping, the stars spinning above her. They were out. Alive. For a breath, silence reigned. Then Ramirez dropped to his knees. Blood soaked through his vest, dark and spreading. His hand pressed hard against his side, but the wound was deep, too deep. Claire's stomach dropped. No. He waved her off, his breath shallow but firm. Doesn't matter, you're clear, that's the mission. Greene shook his head violently. We can. There's no medic here, Ramirez said flat, his voice cutting through the night. No evac, you keep moving, you survive, that's an order. Harris's jaw clenched, his eyes burning. He said nothing. Claire's chest heaved, her hands shaking as she pressed against Ramirez's wound anyway. Blood slicked her fingers, hot and endless. You don't get to die here, she whispered, voice breaking. Not after all this, not after. Ramirez's hand rose, gripping hers. Strong, steady, unshakable, even as his strength bled into the earth. You held, he rasped. His eyes burned into hers. From the first step to the last, you carried us. Her throat closed, tears blurred her vision. You don't understand, she whispered. I was the weakest. His lips cracked a faint, bloody smile. Not tonight. The enemy voices rose again below, closer, climbing. Time was gone. Ramirez's grip tightened on Claire's hand, one final order in his eyes. Go. Her chest shattered. She wanted to scream, to fight, to drag him with her, but she saw it clear and unshakable. This was the weight of survival. This was the chain. She pulled her hand free, choking back a sob, and staggered to her feet. Harris and Greene were already moving, limping toward the dark horizon. She followed, her legs trembling, every step agony. She didn't look back, couldn't. But in her mind, his voice followed. You don't break. Dawn broke hours later, pale light bleeding across the plateau. The squad stumbled through dust and silence, bodies hollow, eyes dark. They had no words left. But they were alive. Because one soldier had refused to be the weakest. Because she had carried the chain. And though the canyon would remember blood, and the stones would remember screams, the squad would remember her in silence. The soldier who stepped forward. The one who didn't break.